What's up everyone, and welcome to another Minecraft Bedrock Redstone tutorial. I'm your host, OmLedu. In this video, we're going to be looking at how to make an item key door. That is a door that doesn't open with a button or a lever, but opens when you throw in the correct item. More specifically, we're going to be building this door right here. It's hack-proof, meaning that you can't just place a button or a lever and open it. In fact, the only way to open this door is by having the right door key. Throwing your key into the keyhole will open the door, as well as return your key so that you can open the door yet again. This can allow you to build all sorts of fancy things, from just having a fancy door lock on your chest room to having admin-only areas and VIP rooms where you need a VIP access card to enter the area. The pressure plate only closes the door, where the button only opens the door. That way, the door is always closed so that people can't sneak inside. And best of all, it's easy to build. The way this works is there's a filter hopper hiding underneath this stair that will be filled with your door key. As for your door key, I would recommend using copies of original books that you wrote using a book and quill. Using this item, you will have 5 in the filter hopper and 1 trapped in the hopper below it, so when you throw in a 7th book into the system, it will unlock the door and spit out a key. And you don't have to use written books as your door key. I'll talk more about other key activations at the end of the video. I like using written books because they don't get lost. People never accidentally use them or compost them. And if you didn't know, you can make copies of original books by placing book and quills with the original in a crafting table or in your crafting menu. To make an original book, simply use a book and quill and then sign the book and name it whatever you want your door key to be, and you're good to go. You can keep the original to make as many door keys as you ever need. This also helps prevent against people making counterfeit door keys. Since you have the original, you're the only one who can make a copy. And if you ever place too many items into the filter hopper, either while you're building it or afterwards, this is an easy, simple fix. Simply go inside, break out this block right here, and you'll have access to the hopper. The hopper should always have 1 door key in it, but the droppers should never have any. So just clean out the droppers if you accidentally put too many in there, and all will be good. This won't break the machine or anything, but it might allow someone to get an extra door key to give to someone who shouldn't have one. But I, for one, really like these doors. They're one of my favorite redstone contraptions. But now let's move on to the build tutorial. Here's all the stuff you will need to build this. The redstone dust, blocks, and glass are not in exact numbers, but everything else is. You will also need a bucket of snow and a dispenser, and your door key, of course. We'll talk more about door keys at the end of the video. The build area is going to be 5x8, dug down 2, with a 4x6 area dug down 3 in the center of that. I went ahead and marked the door in the front entrance so that you know where that's going to be. And when placing your door, be sure to place it from the side, not from the front. That way, when you place a redstone torch under it, that will actually be closing the door. This is also how you make a hack-proof door that can't be opened by someone pressing a button or a lever next to it. Once you get your build area laid out, come to the side farthest from the door and place a piston facing the back, holding a block of obsidian. Then place a redstone torch on the side of that piston, with 2 redstone dust in front of it, and then a target block next to the obsidian. Then place a redstone torch on top of the target block, and then come over and place a piece of glass on top of your piston, and then a solid block next to that piece of glass. Then come up to the top of the machine, and on the farthest back redstone dust, we're going to place a dropper facing up. Just make sure that dropper is facing up, and then jump on top of that dropper, crouch, and jump place another dropper facing up. Then jump over to where your door is so that you can place a dropper facing the door on top of those droppers. Then go back over to where your piston is and place 2 redstone dust on these blocks. Then face away from the door and place a comparator on top of that solid block. Now grab your hoppers and crouch and place a hopper going into the side of that bottom dropper, and then place a hopper going into that comparator. You can always replace the comparator with a temporary block if you're having trouble getting it to point toward the comparator, but make sure that it's pointing toward the comparator, and make sure the bottom hopper is pointing into the bottom dropper. Once you've made sure that the hoppers are facing the right direction, come back over to this side, and we're going to place a dispenser next to this torch right here. Just remember that you can always put a temporary block if you ever have trouble placing a block in the right direction. But then we're going to put a powder snow bucket inside of this dispenser. But then we're going to jump on top of that dispenser, face away from the door, and place a repeater on maximum delay on top of that obsidian. Then we're going to crouch, jump, and place an observer so that it faces down toward that repeater, with a solid block on the back and on the side with redstone dust next to that dropper. Now turn back toward the door and place a solid block diagonally down from this dispenser with a comparator on top of it, like so. That comparator is going to be going into a solid block with 2 redstone dust underneath it, and then a redstone repeater going into the block with the torch on it under the door. And then break out the 2 blocks next to this redstone dust, put a redstone torch on the side of this block going into a redstone repeater. Then place redstone dust on the top of the block the repeater is facing into with a solid block above that dust. Now come back over to your dispenser and place a solid block next to the target block with a comparator going into that block. Just make sure that comparator is facing the front and then place 5 redstone dust right here on the back. And now we need to attach this to a pressure plate. So right here where your floor is going to be, place a solid block and then another solid block. And then technically this one right here doesn't need to be solid. It can be whatever you want your floor to be, but this one right here needs to be solid because we're going to put a pressure plate on top of it. Now place a temporary block underneath that block and then another block going off to the side. Break out the temporary block and place redstone dust on this block right here. Then place a block diagonally down from that with a repeater on it. And now we are just about done. All that's left is to make a way for you to open the door once you're inside the room. So place a temporary block above that pressure plate and then a decorative solid block on top of that with a button on the bottom. Then place another decorative solid block next to this solid block and then redstone dust on the top of these 2 blocks. And then we're going to place decorative solid blocks next to these right here to create a wall and then run the redstone down. And then we're going to use glass to run the redstone all the way down to that torch down there. So place glass diagonally down from each other in these places right here with redstone dust on the top and then redstone dust down here in this hole next to the redstone torch and then on this solid block like so. So now this dust will turn off that torch when it's powered. It'll also receive power from that repeater, but that doesn't matter. And so also, depending on how you want to decorate it, if you don't want your wall to stick out right here, break out this glass and move it over here next to this dust. Just be sure that your wall has a solid block to break the redstone right here next to your pressure plate. And now you are officially done. So now it's just time to hide all the redstone and seal up the machine. A couple of recommendations when you're doing this is to force the player to land on the pressure plate. So wall up right here so that the player is forced to walk over the pressure plate. That way no one will accidentally leave the door open, for people who aren't supposed to be in here. Only people with the key should be able to get into this room. But once you hide the redstone, it's time to talk about how to make a door key. But really quick, before we do that, you can either place a stair or a slab above this hopper. Hoppers can pull items through stairs and slabs. So if you don't mind seeing that dropper back there, you can use a slab. That might be kind of cool. Or you can just use a stair to hide that dropper completely. It is totally up to you. Another thing that you can do is place a glazed magenta terracotta from the left side, like so, and you'll end up with an arrow pointing down to where your keyhole is. But now about keys. If you don't want to use copies of books, you can always use any named item, or any unnamed item. Just any unnamed item anyone would be able to open the door, where if you name an item, it'll be unique, so it'll function as a key. So only people that have that named item will be able to open the door. But just like with copies of books, place at least one of the named item into every single slot in this hopper, and then place items in the first slot until one of them falls through. Once one item falls through the hopper, you are ready to go. After that, placing one more item into the system will toggle the door and spit out one of your door keys, like so. There's always one additional item trapped in the hopper underneath this filter hopper, so just keep that in mind if it seems kind of strange. And just like with item sorters, you can always use named items just as filler for your copies of books. If you don't want to make 6 copies just to be in the system, you can just put 2 of those books in the first slot and then add named items until one of them falls through. Just be sure to only use the item in the very first slot as your key. Never throw items into the system that's not in the first slot. So just make sure that if you use a filler item, it's named something unique so that it'll never get thrown into the system. And then one last thing I didn't notice until I was halfway done with editing, you actually don't need the button. If you break out all the redstone and this glass running from the button, you can just attach the door opening to the pressure plate itself. So this redstone dust right here, simply run the redstone dust over to that torch, but be sure to place a repeater somewhere in the middle, because that repeater over there will actually power something that it shouldn't. But if you have a repeater in here like so, then now the pressure plate will be the thing opening the door from the inside, so you won't even need the button. I actually redesigned this machine 8 times before I made a video on it, and never even thought about trying to run the pressure plate as both the door closer and the door opener. That just goes to show that with redstone, there's always another way. And that's all we got for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here, especially if you're one of my subscribers who came back to check out yet another video. It is because of you that I can continue making these things, so thank you so much. You are totally awesome. If you missed last episode, we talked about item sorters, so be sure to check that out if that interests you. And if you like this video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and even if you didn't like this video, leave me a comment and let me know why. I'm always trying to improve my video making, and so your negative criticism could really help me out. Consider subscribing for more Redstone tutorials, Redstone mini-games, farm videos, seed videos, and more. Also, leave me a comment of what you would like to see, and I will try to get it done in a future video. But until then, I've been your host, OmLedu, hopefully teaching you a Redstone trick or two. And reminding you, as always, don't forget to have fun. Bye-bye.